everyone, it's Kris from my girlfriend's quilt shop, and I'm so excited because today we're going to be diving right into You're a Good Egg. That's right, it's the April mini quilt from Kimberbell, and it is just as cute as ever. And one of the things I love about this is not only are we going to play with beautiful fabrics, but we also get to learn a brand new technique out there for machine embroidery, and that is with reverse applique. It's incredible how it's done. I'm always stunned at how these digitizers at Kimberbell do this. I'm so excited to be able to share it with you today. So in this series of videos, we're going to divide this April mini quilt into 3 different segments, okay? The first one, we're going to just do an overview, and we're also going to dive into being able to do the You're a Good Egg banner that you can see right here. This is so darling. However, if you don't have a large hoop, then you might get stuck a little bit, but no worries because I've got your back. So if you have a 9.5 by 14 inch hoop, you're going to be able to do this all in one hooping. However, I know many of you may not. And so I'm going to also show you in the first video how the 5 by 7 hoop can work to your advantage by just doing a multi-hooping 2 times. All right, so it might sound harder than it is. It's actually really quite easy, and I'll take you step by step on how to do that. In our second video, we're going to talk about doing the reverse applique and how does that work with the embroidery machine? How do we bring those designs together? And you're going to see how much fun reverse applique can be. Not too intimidating, I promise. And the third video will continue doing reverse applique, but this time it's also done in 2 different hoopings because one is going to be the cute little animal on the inside of the egg, and then the second part, part B, will be completing the egg. So lots of different techniques to get into. I'm super excited to have you. Let's do this. So what I encourage you to do first is to print out your instructions. They're found on your CD. And that's what I did here, and I just put them in a simple 3-ring binder, all right? So let's take a look and see how it's laid out. Just as with all the mini quilts that are from Kimberbell, they have this wonderful materials needed list that tells you exactly the fabric that you're going to be using, as well as the purpose of it and what row it is in and the cut size. Very, very handy to have. So you could cut all of your pieces from the beginning here, but also in addition to that, you also have a fabric cutting diagram, which is really nice. You see the fabric right here, and you can visually be able to tell what different pieces are cut out. Now, what I would like you to do is if you're a little unfamiliar with how the cutting works, then I want to encourage you to go back to our previous videos that we have done on the mini quilts. We've done 3 of them so far, and you're going to be able to see firsthand exactly how Kimberbell lays out their diagrams. And once you've done one, the rest is so simple. You just follow the diagram, and it's really, really easy. But go back to the previous videos to be able to see that if you need a little bit of a review. All right? So to begin today's lesson, let's talk about the You're a Good Egg block. Nice and long, very easy to do, especially for those of you who have an 8 by 12 hoop or larger, right? 9.5 by 14, doesn't matter. And the directions are very straightforward, very simple on how to make this in one hooping. However, in today's video, I'm actually going to talk about how to multi-hoop for those of us with smaller hoop sizes. So this can actually be done in 2 hoopings using the 5 by 7 hoop. And you're going to do a few little changes than what we're used to, but it really isn't too difficult. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to open up our instruction book to page 7, where it's going to tell us how to do it if we were doing it with an 8x12, as I mentioned, right? It's all one hooping, pretty straightforward. But right here at the top, it says, note, the 5x7 hooping instructions are found in a separate PDF file. So if you're not sure where that is, if you're looking at your instructions going, I'm not sure where that's at, make sure to check back on your, in your files, your USB stick, your CD, for the specific instructions, which I have right here, for good egg. And this is how to do the multi-hooping. So it says, note, 8x12 hooping instructions are found in the main quilt instructions. Instructions below are for the 5x7 hoop. All right, so we've got it that far. Now, the fabric one is the background. That is 14.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and that is what I have here. And you will notice that I have actually already taken the time to add the fusible backing and ironed it onto the back. It also tells us to have 2 thumbtacks. So you want the flat head thumbtacks, not the ones that poke out, but are nice and flat. And you'll see how that works with our multi-hooping and repositioning here in a minute. It's awesome. You're going to love it. All right. So I'm going to set those 2 aside. And then coming back to our instructions, we've got the water soluble or heat sensitive pen. So I'm going to use that in addition. All right. Now, if you are doing background quilting, what you do need to do is, if you're doing multi-hooping, you're going to use the clear blue tiles quilting instructions. So this is different from what the other block by block quilting is, because as you can see here, I've quilted edge to edge all the way down the strip. All right. You'll also notice that the batting goes all the way to the edge. Unlike the other blocks that we've done in this mini quilt, we have the batting is not included in that 1/4 inch seam. However, because we're using clear blue tiles method, it actually will go right to the very end. Don't you worry, it still goes in just fine into the quilt. So it is a little bit different. So we have to do this in a few additional steps in order to be able to multi-hoop. So the first thing we have to do is we need to use the clear blue tiles method in order to quilt the background. Then we'll go back in and we'll start doing You're a Good Egg. So how is this done? Well, let me go ahead and set this aside. And just like we normally would with any quilt sandwich, we have like a backing, right? And then we have the batting, and then we have the layer on top. And using the clear blue tiles method, we're going to take our 4x4 little tile and mark all the way across. And I'll actually be able to quilt this from beginning to end in 4 hoopings. So what I'm going to do first is I will go ahead and mark this. Now, don't worry about going all the way to the very tip top, because some of that is going to be cut off. So I'm just going to start from the left-hand side and move over to the right. In order to find the markings, I just simply place my little pin and put the dot in the middle. And then you see these arrows going in all the different directions. I like to just lightly pin that in. All right, I don't have to go all the way to the end, and I'm also not really bringing that marker deep into the fabric. It's just a quick light tap, 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 right? I don't need to worry about the size because all of my hoopings will be using the 4x4 finished size, so there's no need to write in a number there. But I do need to do this. I'm going to put in little tick marks here so that I know where to line up my next tile. So I do it from each of the corners. All right, now that that first hooping has been marked, I go ahead, I lift it up, I place the clear blue tile up right next to it, so you can see the little markings right here and here. I'm just going to butt that up right against each other, and my markings up here and down there. And I'll repeat the same steps. Just bloop, 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 bloop. Okay, do a marking, Another little marking on this side. Lift it up. Now I know exactly where to place the next tile. All right, so you can see that it's lined up right there. Do my little markings, and I've got one more space to go. Notice it's not going to be able to cover the whole thing, or I should say it's covering more than what I need, and that's okay. All right, I'll just go ahead and put my little dot and my little markings there. All right, so what are these markings for? The markings are so that we know exactly where to place the needle when we take it to the machine. So as we get to the machine, you'll see a little bit more up close that I'm going to move the needle position to go directly over top of that center position in each of those areas. All right. So with that being done, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take my Kimberbell paper tape and I'm just going to place it right along the edges here just to hold this in place. I don't want to take the chance of my fabric coming up, especially if the foot wants to pull it up as it goes over. So we just do these little tapings all the way around to help prevent that. Okay. Now, at this point, when we normally would do clear blue tiles using this method, we might have a backing on it as well, which we certainly could do. You could put like just a scrap piece of fabric. Remember, it's not going to be shown, so it really doesn't matter the color or what it looks like or how old that fabric is. Just use something that can actually be put into the hoop. So with that being said, let's go ahead and grab some extra fabric so that I have something for this to hold on to. So I'm going to lay this extra fabric down first. The right side is facing down. Again, although it doesn't really matter, we're not going to see the back. This is a scrap piece from my stash. I'm going to use a little bit of 505 spray adhesive. Again, just to make sure that this is a nice flat quilt sandwich. So just a little bit will do. I could have used it as well on top of the batting, adhering it to the green, but it went down pretty smoothly, so I'm not too worried. Again, this is just to hold on to everything for the hoop to be able to stay in place. And now, let's go ahead and hoop this. I'm going to be using the 5x7 hoop, or you could use the 4x4 hoop. It doesn't really matter. I've got plenty of space here that I definitely could use the larger hoop. If you only have a 4x4 hoop, you could do the same thing here, but we'll go ahead and use the 5x7 for this one. One of the things that I like to do when it comes to making these blocks is that I do like to use oftentimes a larger hoop size than what it's called for if I can get away with it. And the reason for that is because it gives me a little bit more wiggle room to be able to just kind of lock that needle into the center position. You'll see exactly what I mean here in just a second. I'm going to kind of eyeball this. You can see that we have some markings on the side, markings on the top and bottom. I'm going to give it my best shot and try to get it as close as I can. Again, because I'm using a larger hoop than is needed, this allows me just some more wiggle room to make sure and get the needle where I want it to go. All right. Okay, so you can see that that is now in place. My hoop is nice and tight. We're now at the machine, and I need to pull up the Clear Blue Tiles KDQ 250. It's the 4x4 design that you can see right there. And you will notice, let's pull this up, how we can tell that this is different than the block by block method is you'll notice that there are no lines around it, no boxes. And that's important because this tells me we're using Clear Blue tiles and this is going to do an overall edge to edge, and I'm not going to have any 1/4 inch seam allowances built into it like we would on block by block. All right, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and stitch this out. So I hit set and embroidery. I'm now ready to place the hoop into the machine. There we go. Be sure that you don't have anything sticking underneath the hoop that will get caught. And now if I go back to my screen here, I'm going to go to layout and move, because my goal here is to get that needle directly over the center position. Remember when we made the little point in the middle on the clear blue tiles? That's where I want my needle to go. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to hit the move and watch that needle go directly over. So let's see, move, and you can see here that it's moving ever so slightly. If I want to, and if your machine has this, take advantage of using a guide beam that you'll see here on the screen. And now let's take a closer look at what's underneath the needle. There is this little beam of light that is flashing down, and that really helps me as well be able to center this exactly where I need it to be. It looks like I'm all okay with the horizontal position. And now, oops, I just need to move it over a little bit to the left right here for the vertical position. And bingo, I'm perfect. I'm ready to go ahead and begin stitching. Do you see how nice it is to be able to have a little bit larger hoop and you have more wiggle space, more wiggle room to just get that needle exactly where you want it to go. Now I'll go ahead and put my foot down and begin the fun part, which is stitching the background quilting. At this point, my background quilting is finished for the first hooping, but now it's time to go to the second hooping. So here's a little trick I like to do. Whenever I'm using the clear blue tiles method, I actually like to keep the bottom hoop in place where it's at. I don't even pull out the entire quilt. That's why I love magnetic hoops for so many reasons. And one of the reasons is because of that. It's really easy to just take off that top and put it back down. I'm not using a magnetic hoop this time. And so you might be wondering, can you do the same thing? The answer is yes. Go ahead and keep your hoop in the bottom position the way it is. And all I'm going to do is just lightly loosen up my screws so that the top hoop comes off real easily. I'm going to reposition my quilt sandwich and make sure that the second hooping is over top of that center needle position. And then I just simply place it back in. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to hold this with my right hand, or if it's big enough, you can actually place it over top, but this one's not going to fit. So I'm just going to hold it with my right hand. Notice that I'm kind of getting this quilt sandwich in the ballpark of my center needle position. And then I'm just going to place this right back down. As I start to go down, I can see that I might need to reposition a little bit more. And I can do any fine-tune adjustments with the move button. All right, so that's perfect there. I'll take my little hoop screwdriver and just tighten that up just a little bit. And now I'm going to come over to the screen again and hit my little guide beam. That's going to show exactly where the needle position is. Wow, I am so close. Holy cow. All right, all I have to do is just bump it over 1, maybe 2 bumps. There we go. That looks great. And put my foot down and start to go again. Now, the nice thing about using the clear blue tiles method is because we were able to center the needle over the center of those crosshairs, you'll notice that the quilting actually doesn't even go over top of the quilting from the previous hooping. It just kind of rides up right against it, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want it to do, so that you really can't tell the beginning from the end, when you started, when you stopped doing the quilting. It's a beautiful, seamless, edge-to-edge quilting method. And that's done with the second hooping. Now it's time to go to the third hooping. And that was so much fun. Let's just continue the process, right? Loosen the screw. Pull up that top hoop. Readjust our quilt sandwich. Try to get it in the near vicinity of the center area. Push the hoop back in, tighten, adjust by moving the arrows on your machine. If you need to and have a guide beam, go ahead and use that as well. And there we go. I'm ready to stitch. So guess what? I'm actually stopping the design in the middle of the design. Now, I could continue on, but it would be kind of an unnecessary waste of time to continue stitching when I really don't need to. So it's perfectly okay to go ahead and stop the machine where it's at and be finished with the background quilting on this block. I've now taken the hoop out of the machine, and I'll go ahead and unhoop the project. I'm also going to remove the tape and just set it aside, saving it for another time I need it on this project. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and trim my green right up here against the edge. I want to go ahead and remove these little markings here. So with the help of a misting spray bottle full of water, I will do just that by just simply spraying it. Notice how those marks are just disappearing right before our eyes. I have found the misting spray bottle to be the very best way of being able to remove the markings. My background piece is ready to go. Now all I have to do is just let that dry for a few moments, and then I'm ready to begin again. Now, if we take a look at page 1 under the two-part process here, it tells us to do the clear blue tiles method to quilt the background. We've already finished that. And now it's time to go on to part A, hooping instructions. It tells us to fold the background fabric in half lengthwise with right sides together to create a center fold. Then we fold the bottom edge over 1.5 inches. How we do that is we're going to take this, again, right sides together. I'm just going to finger press this at first, and then I will take my iron to this and press it so it has a nice fold. Now, when it tells us to fold the bottom edge over 1.5 inches, that may seem a little confusing at first because you might be considering this to be the bottom. However, if you look at the instructions and you look at the photo that's there, you can see that it's oriented a little bit differently. The center fold is on this side, the opening is on this side. This now becomes the bottom, and this is what we're going to fold up by 1.5 inches. And again, this is simply just to give us some placement lines for when it comes to putting it inside the hoop. So we have a fold here that's been pressed and a fold right along here that's been pressed. The next instruction tells us to pull up the Part A embroidery file into the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. As we come over to the machine, you can see here that I have some different files. I'm looking for KD 5130 5x7, and it's the first part of that little sentiment, and it says your A. So I'll go ahead and press that, hit set, and embroidery. Let's refer back to our instructions again, and you can see here that direction number 1 says to stitch the background placement line and tick mark directly onto the stabilizer. So what I've done is I've taken my light mesh cutaway stabilizer and hooped it into the 5x7 hoop. Then I'll go ahead and stitch out that placement line and the tick mark, and then it tells us to place the prepared background fabric, which is this right here, aligning the bottom fold with the placement line that is shown in red and the center fold with the tick mark in the placement line that is shown in blue. While keeping the background fabric aligned, carefully unfold it and tape into place. So if we take a look at these pictures down here, we can see that we've got a tick mark. We will see exactly where to place the bottom of our fold, the center of our fold. We open it up and tape it, and then go ahead and it stitches down the placement line. Now let's take a look at how this looks at the machine. Now I brought this hoop out of the machine just so you could see it a little more clearly as to what's going to happen, but you can see here that it has the placement line and the little tick mark. Now what I'm going to do is, remember that fold along the bottom? That is going to line up horizontally. That center fold is going to line up right against that tick mark, just like that. Now I can open it up and finger press that down, and I'm going to use my paper tape to hold this in place. Perfect. Now let's take it back to the machine. So next we're stitching the tack down stitch. It's just going to hold it in place. It really doesn't matter what color thread you use. I'm going to happen to have pink in it just because that's my next stitch color that I'm going to use on the lettering. But it really doesn't matter. Again, this is just holding this piece down into the hoop. Now it's time to stitch out those letters. It is time to begin getting ready to do the multi-hooping. Now for purposes of this video, I'm actually going to change the thread color out from pink to black. Now if you're at home, there's no need to change out the thread color. I just want to make sure that everyone can clearly see the differences between the tack down lines and the tick marks and everything else in between. So I am switching out for black for the video. We are now set up for success for the multi-hooping. I'm going to remove the hoop from the machine, take it over to the cutting station, and now we're going to see exactly where we place those thumbtacks to help us with the next step. I'm going to remove the tape as well. Just kind of set that aside. We'll use it here in just a minute. And I'm also going to remove the stabilizer, but just up to the edge of the fabric is all. And from the back side, I'll take my scissors and just trim up close. With that being trimmed up, let's go ahead and go back to our instructions here and see what it tells us. We've trimmed the stabilizer. All right, so we are on to part 2. This is part B, embroidery instructions. This is where we're going to add on good egg. We're going to use the 5x7 hoop once again and simply do the stabilizer only. Now, this is where the thumbtacks come into play. It's asking us to place the thumbtack exactly in the corners of each registration mark. And then we tape over the head of the thumbtacks to hold them in place. So I'm just going to turn the hoop over, and where the lines connect at the corner is where you're going to place the little thumbtack in on both sides. There we go. And then I'm going to take a little piece of paper tape and just cover that very carefully. Don't want to push too hard. I don't want to pop this out of the hoop, right? And bring this back over. And now I can just kind of push that into place a little bit better. So these little thumbtacks are sticking up, and that's going to help us to know exactly where to place this fabric. And the goal here is to get the edges or the points of the thumbtacks into the corner registration marks that were stitched out previously. So what I'm going to do is actually fold this back in half, right sides together. Make sure the orientation of your design looks exactly like the orientation found in the book. So the Y, it looks backwards and it's up at the top. And now I can very carefully maneuver this so that the thumbtacks go into that same placement line that was stitched in the corners. If you need to readjust, you certainly can. All right, the nice thing about this is that even if you make a few holes in here, it's all going to be cut off. So you don't have to worry about it too much. Let's just do our very best to get that little thumbtack into the corners of the registration marks. There we go, bingo. That looks great. Now with those thumbtacks in place, I'm ready to go ahead and stitch the second half of this design. Just going to make sure this is nice and straight. I am going to use a little bit of paper tape just to hold this in place. There we go. And I'm ready to take it back to the machine, but before I do so, now I will remove the thumbtacks. I don't want the thumbtacks with my machine. Isn't that snazzy? I love how easy it is to align the two hoopings using that method. I'll place this back into the machine, and with my foot down, I'm ready to do the tack down stitch for the second half. And now I'm ready to switch my thread color back to the original pink that I had begun with at the first part of this little phrase. Now we just finished the rest of the phrase, and we are to the final step of being able to stitch out our cutting diagrams. So it's really going to help us with knowing how to cut this specific block. Let's go ahead and do that. It's time to trim this baby up, and this is how we're going to do it. Let's pay attention at the instructions here. Again, I'm on page 2 if you're following along. Trimming instructions, it says to trim the block to 12.5 by 2.5 as follows. So we're going to place the block right side up. We're going to locate the center tick marks in the trimming guides and measure 6.25 inches to the left of the marks, and we'll place a mark there. We're also going to do the same thing on the right hand side and place a mark there. So where are my tick marks? right here, my friends. The little tick mark is the line that goes out perpendicular to our little phrase here. So that's considered a tick mark. It's right in the middle. And I'm going to measure 6 1/4 inches here and here and draw a line. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1/4 right there. And I will extend that line all the way down. I'll do the same thing on this side. Here's my tick mark. I'm measuring out 6 1/4 inches. Draw my line and bring this one all the way down. Moving on to page number 3, we've already done the right line, but it also tells us to place the ruler along the top trimming guide and mark the top trimming line the full length of the block. So we're going to do that on both the top and the bottom as well. So which one is our top trimming line? It's this one right here. These outside lines, again, were just tack down lines, so that's not considered our trimming line. So here's my trimming line. I'll place it right up against that and continue a line all the way down. I'll repeat this on the other side. Trimming line is the one right here. And place my ruler up against it and create a line all the way down. Okie dokie. With those lines now being drawn, I know exactly where to cut the rest. And there we go. Isn't that cute? Our egg block is all done. You're a good egg. And this is ready to now go and put it in the rest of my mini quilt. So a few extra steps involved, but no worries. As we say, who cares how long cute takes, right? So this is all done and we're ready to move on to our next video, and that is making those adorable reverse applique eggs and little animals.